What up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Dirt Road. That's Mike over there to my right.
Mr. Rick.
What's happening, brother? That's the Dirt Road behind us.
Welcome back, everybody. We're happy to see you again.
You don't know where it's going to go, but we do know where we're going to start. And we are going to start again with the vice presidential debate. If you watch our last video, and hopefully you do, Mike and I just gave like our basic thoughts on the debate, and we both kind of agreed that it's meaningless. It really doesn't mean anything. It's not going to change minds, most likely. So in this video, what we want to do is we want to get into the substance, the questions that were asked, and maybe what we would have liked to have seen as answers, or what we thought of the questions and so forth. So we can't do all of them, obviously. We're not going to do a 2-hour video. So we picked a couple that we thought were important. I personally was very happy, Mike, that the first question was on foreign policy. I didn't expect that.
Me too.
You know, because just it seems like that's something most people don't really pay a whole lot of attention to. I was very disappointed that there was no question on Ukraine, but in the last video I went into my little tinfoil hat conspiracy theory
Rick joined
about
us
that.
on the conspiracy side. Just for a moment, though.
Just for a moment. Just for a
Go
moment.
watch the last episode. He joined us for a moment. It's an epic thing, okay? We started to turn him. We just started, okay? We all need you in the comment section to help me turn him to the dark side with us now.
But I do honestly think that there was a conscious decision not to ask that question.
100%.
I have my thoughts as to why, and that was a little bit of a
We
conspiracy.
talked about it the last episode. Definitely check it out. It is well worth the watch.
But foreign policy, to me, I've said it before, Mike, to me that's the most important issue for two reasons. One, I give my old saying that I always do, you can't fix dead.
Yeah.
You know, anything else could be fixed. You can't fix dead. You can't fix a war once it's happened.
Yeah.
The other reason, though, why I think it's very important, Mike, and I don't know if you agree or not, is there are a lot of things that a president really doesn't have a whole lot of power on, even the economy. President, you know, fiscal policy is obviously very important, and it does matter. But the one thing that, and I think it's unfortunate, but the one thing that a president nowadays, not in the past, nowadays, has 100% control over is foreign policy, and more important, where and if our troops are going to be used.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the most important thing you could ask in a presidential debate, because that's the one thing that a president has very close to unilateral authority over.
Yeah. You're going to start a war. You're going to go get American boys and girls dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they obviously a treaty, even though this doesn't happen anymore, they have quote unquote agreements, but a treaty is supposed to be ratified by 2/3 of the Senate.
Yeah.
But you know, even going back to the days of Washington, you know, the president gets to decide who we're going to be allies with, who we're not going to be allies with. And nowadays, unlike the way our founders wanted it, the president really controls war and peace. I mean, we haven't had a declaration of war since we declared war on, I guess, Italy in 1942 or whatever, but that's the last time. But we've had many wars, but somehow no declaration.
A war on terror that lasted over 20 years.
Yeah, so presidents have that kind of authority, and I think it's the most important thing that can be asked. So I was very happy that they did ask at least one question on it, and it was the first one. So, Mike, I'm going to read you the question. We'll talk a little bit about how the candidates responded to it, but then I want to hear your thoughts on it. So the very first question Margaret Brennan asked was, she said, earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel. But that attack failed thanks to the joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. Not so sure it failed completely, but whatever. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent the regional war. Not so sure that that's his goal, but Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world and has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. I don't know how Margaret Brennan knows that Iran can make a nuclear weapon in a week.
That's been reported by like the UN Watchdog Group. It was reported by our intelligence agencies, released that publicly.
All right. Well, you know what, Mike? It's been a week.
They could build one.
So do they have one now? I don't know.
Listen, that's a hot mess.
I don't know. Anyway, so then she finally got to a question after her little soliloquy and telling us all how smart she is. And she said, Governor Waltz, if you are the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes. Now, I'm not going to read the answers because they're too long, but both of the candidates kind of dodged the question.
Yeah, no one really committed to anything on it. Yeah.
No, and we said in our last video they really can't because they're not the one who makes the decision.
Because they can't speak for the president. Right?
Exactly. So Tim Waltz used the opportunity then to say, well, we need a steady hand there, and Donald Trump is not a steady hand. He's chaotic, and blah blah blah. And then, of course, Vance reminded him that when Trump was president, we didn't get into wars, and
calm.
Things were more at peace. And both of them just made a very generalized, we need to support our allies sort of an answer. So, what would you have liked to have heard from either one of these two men, who will, one of them, be a heartbeat away from the presidency?
Just tell me, policy-wise, what you're going to do.
And what would you have liked that policy to be?
For me personally?
Yeah.
I think preemptively striking against any nuclear arms that Iran might be developing is probably a good idea. Because this regime is so far crazy, right? They don't think about consequences. I mean, look what they've done already, right? They've supported, look how much terrorism they support already. Do you really think that they'd withhold, that they have some kind of restraint where they would hold themselves back from using a weapon like that? Absolutely not. So I think preemptively hitting it, while it does it makes things a little bit ugly, at the end of the day, I think hitting any facility where they're actually developing nuclear weapons is probably a good idea to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon and actually using it against anyone else. So,
all right,
I'm for taking out the nuclear weapon for that. That cannot happen. This is not like talking about North Korea, right? Where Kim Jong-un he'll rattle the saber, he'll say a lot of things, but at the end of the day, the guy's not going to launch it because he, at the very minimum, understands that it's just going to be that the reciprocity is just not worth it. He's not going to gain anything from it. Iran doesn't care about gaining anything. They only care about destroying. That's a dangerous, dangerous player on the field, and that needs to be nullified. So I would like to hear what both of them honestly should have been saying. Listen, we'll do what it takes to make sure that they don't get to use a nuclear weapon against any other nation. That should be the answer.
I mean, fair enough. I don't know that I agree 100%. I agree, obviously, that I would not want a country like Iran to have nuclear weapons, but there are plenty of countries in the world that have them that I don't think should.
India and Pakistan.
India and Pakistan are two of the biggest examples. A preemptive strike. Look, I know that this is the thing, since 9/11, it's the Bush doctrine. If there's a potential danger, supposedly we have the right to do it. I don't like the question because the way that she asked the question pretty much proves that none of our allies do anything without our explicit consent. And that's not the way the world's supposed to work. The question should be posed to Netanyahu. What are you going to do? To us, no, I don't think we should just blindly support. What would it look like? How many civilians would be killed? Would it really achieve its goal? There's a lot of things to consider, and people hit back when you hit them. And Iran is not, they're not a powerful country like us, but they're not Nepal. I mean, they do have ballistic missiles. They do have weaponry that can kill people now without having nuclear weapons.
They've been launching attacks.
So the question really should have been phrased the way it's supposed to be phrased. Are you willing to get into a major war to prevent Iran from having nuclear weapons? I would have rather the question be phrased that way because that's the truth. You can't just say, "Oh, we'll take them out and then everything's going to be over," and they'll, because we have this kind of weird sense that if we hurt Iran enough, the people there will rise up against their government. That revolution occurred 50 years ago, Mike.
Nobody's rising up.
We don't know how the Iranian people feel. I'm sure there's a lot of dissenters, but maybe a majority of the Iranians are fine with their government. I don't know. I don't believe what I read in the newspapers, so I just don't know. But anyway, the question really should have been what the question is implying. Are you willing to go into an all-out war in the Middle East to prevent Iran from having nuclear weapons? I would have rather that because I think you'd get a more honest response then.
That's an excellent question. That's actually excellent. That's exactly how it should have been phrased. Iran waging war, their military is not really built for offensive capability. They're really not built to go out and take other lands and hold them. Their military is really centered around just defense of their own borders. That's really what it is. Mm-hmm. But it's still a significant military, and it would still be a significant amount of loss of life if you go to war with these people. It's war. People are going to die. A lot of people.
They have a significant amount of missiles, Mike, and they're not.
Well, no, they have a tremendous amount of missiles. Obviously, they're not afraid of firing. They've been firing into Israel. Yeah. They fired again the largest ballistic missile attack against any modern country.
That's
was just fired by them. Yeah. And obviously, we knocked down the vast majority of them, but some did get through. How many times can you be, spot on knocking them down?
Which brings me back to my point there, Mike.
It's a flashpoint,
We are, you just said it yourself, which is true. we are actively engaging with Israel to shoot these missiles down.
Yep.
Which means we are engaging in a military exercise again, not exercise. I'm sorry, a military maneuver or a military action against Iran. Where was the congressional vote on that?
There is none.
Where is the public debate on that?
There is none.
None. All we have is people saying Iran must be stopped. And maybe that's true. Again, I'm not even arguing. I'm not arguing for Iran or against Iran. I'm arguing as somebody who believes in the Constitution, and I don't understand how Joseph Robinette Biden, or Donald Trump for that matter, has the authority to have our military engage in hostilities on behalf of another country with no vote in Congress and no input from the American people. That's what bothers me. So whether or not Iran should have a nuclear weapon, that's a different topic. I don't think most people would think it's a good idea that they do. But the question really is, what could we do to stop it? And to be involved in this war, and we are involved, Mike. That was not the Iron Dome that got rid of all of those missiles.
No, that was our ships out there in the Med firing and knocking them
So
down.
we are now engaging in hostilities with another sovereign state with no vote in Congress, no discussion with the American people. And like I said to you before, this could lead to a wider war. Because again, you can't just say, oh, let's take out the oil refineries and let's take out their this and their that, thinking that you're going to do it and they're going to go, oh my God, I didn't know America could do that. We better stop.
That's never going to happen.
It doesn't work that way.
No.
So are you willing to get into a war over this? I think that would change at least the conversation. Maybe it wouldn't change the answer in the end. Maybe people would say, yes, we are. And that's fair. I don't know that I am, but maybe, we do. But there's not that conversation.
We have a capability to do like a precise strike on their nuclear arms. Right? So if they have like a nuclear arms facility or processing plant, we have the capability. We have bunker buster bombs. We have the capability to take that place out and just that place.
Yeah.
So that.
But that place is where? It's in.
I'm not 100% sure. It's not in a populated area.
But it's in where?
It's in Iran.
It's in Iran.
It's in Iran itself.
So it's within Iran's borders.
Within Iran's borders.
And the last time you checked the map, Iran is a sovereign state.
Yeah.
So we can just do what we want.
I think for protection. Okay? I think for protection. I don't necessarily think it's okay, but I think there are sometimes extreme circumstances that call for extreme measure. Had the sanctions against Iran that were put in place by Trump and kept in place, rather than sending them billions of dollars like friggin' Obama did, or giving them back their sanctioned money like Biden did. That enabled them to build these kinds of weapons. That enabled them to do what they're doing. That also enabled them to help fund the October 7th attack, to do a lot of the other things that led to this war with Israel that's going on right now.
This war with
Israel.
Israel, not America.
Not America. But, I agree with you on a presidential thing. I don't understand when we kind of lost sight of the fact that, there should be a congressional approval for these military conflicts that we're getting into. Right, but if you look at like Vietnam, right, there was no congressional. Any of these
there was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. You're right. It was not a declared war. That's what I said before.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Is you have these police state actions.
But at least back
actions.
then we had national conversations about it and huge protests about it, and people actually discussed it. I just don't like this idea that we can just talk about, we need to take out this site because they might do this. I don't like the idea of Iran having a nuclear weapon, but maybe Iran doesn't like the idea of Israel having a nuclear weapon, which we all know they do, even though
they've had it since the 70s.
So, if you look at it from the way the rest of the world looks at it, who is America to decide what countries are allowed to have what? I even argued this, Mike, and I know this is not popular, but it's just the way I feel. Yeah. I even argued this back with the Iraq War. Everybody said, it wound up that they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And my thought always was, even if they did, what right do we have to just invade a country and say you can't have these weapons? Diplomacy is a good thing, and diplomacy works sometimes. And just this constant threat, we're going to kick your ass, as if nobody's going to hit back. It bothers me. And, Israel went after Hamas, which they should have.
Yep.
They pretty much wiped them out.
Yeah, 90% or something like that.
It's there right now, at this point, now it's a war of choice for Israel.
Because now they're fighting Hezbollah.
Right, because now they're deciding they want to go after Hezbollah, they want to go after Iran.
And Lebanon.
That's a war, right, exactly, another sovereign state.
Yep.
So I had a problem with the way they conducted the war in Gaza. I get it that it's difficult and it's hard, but a lot of civilians died. It was ignored for the most part. But right now, what they're doing now is a war of choice, and kind of reminds me of what we did after 9/11. Our first initial reactions after 9/11 were, in my opinion, correct.
We went after the camps in Afghanistan.
Exactly, and we went after the Taliban that was
And then that
allowing
was
that to
used
happen.
as a precursor to go into Iraq, which didn't have to happen.
That's when I changed my mind, because you can't just say because there's a danger out there that you have the right to just go out and police the world and take care of it.
I mean, the Bush Doctrine is what you call it. It's,
Yeah,
that's
that's what
perfectly
it is.
described.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I don't think we need to be the world police, and I don't think we should be going into every sovereign nation and doing whatever the hell we feel like because we're the big boy on the block. So I agree with you on that. Iran with a nuclear weapon, to me, is like the worst possible outcome. It really is, because
It's not a good
It's a
thing.
rogue state that legitimately doesn't care. Like, Putin, North Korea, whatever, China has nuclear weapons. We all have nuclear weapons. All these big countries, even Pakistan, India have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
But it's balanced because they know the other one's going to annihilate them too, and there's a balance there, and there's
But
people
wouldn't
there
that
who
balance?
understand that.
Look, Israel has nuclear weapons. Everybody knows it. So I don't know that. I mean, to just assume that Iran, because we think they're crazy, that they're going to do something that they know would be suicidal. If they use the nuclear weapon, Mike, that's the end of Iran. It's over.
Yeah,
and
no,
they
they'd be
have to know that. They have to know that.
Here's the one
I don't
thing
care
that-
how crazy they are. They have to
Here's
know
the
that.
one thing that gives me pause with Iran. Iran, 50 years they've been there. 50 years they've hated Israel, right? Up until this last year, there was never a direct action against Israel by Iran.
No, but let's
Right?
remember why, though.
Because there was that balance that was kept, and there was diplomacy and there were other things that kind of kept them both in check.
Okay, but Mike, those 200 missiles or whatever they were, that didn't just happen one day because some mullah woke up and said, let me send these missiles. Let's remember what happened before. Israel attacked Iran's, I think it was their consulate, not their embassy, in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Blew it up.
Yeah.
That is an act of war. Listen, when that happened to our African embassies in the 90s, what do we call it? Terrorism. That's what it is. So Israel went after their embassy
that's the
in a
point I'm making.
sovereign country.
No, I'm agreeing with you. That's the point I'm trying to make is countering my own point about how I think Iran really is a radical regime and that they would. Countering my own point, I guess I'm trying to give you the other side of the argument from my own perspective would be they've got a 50-year history of not responding so violently. I mean, they do a lot of rhetoric, but not responding so violently. So, I'm not a big fan of the Bush Doctrine. I don't think we should be running into every country we can and just bombing the crap out of them. I think it's stupid. War should be the absolute last resort anytime, anywhere. Honestly, because civilians pay the price of war. Soldiers will die, but civilians are going to pay the price. That's how it is every time. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's just always going to be the civilians paying the price. So, to me, that's always ever the last option. I think the idea of Iran getting a nuclear weapon is terrifying, but counter to that point is you have a 50-year history of them not responding, and then these responses they've given were the ballistic missile attacks were in response to something that was done either on their soil or to their people.
Right, and your embassy is considered your soil.
Your soil, yeah.
Again, when our embassies have been attacked in the past, like in the 90s, I remember
We treated it
twice
like
in
hostile actions by... Yeah.
which it was. And
We're
then
still in Africa fighting those terrorists in Africa. We're
Israel,
still there.
Of course we are, yeah, exactly.
We're still there.
And Israel just recently, within the last couple of weeks, remember the Hezbollah's pagers and cell phones blew up, right? All right, great, wonderful, it sounds wonderful, but if that had happened, if Hezbollah had done that to Israeli, to the IDF, it would be called an act of terrorism.
Absolutely.
All right, those bad guys, and they are bad guys, Hezbollah. Some of them could have been in a supermarket when their pager blew up.
Well, they were. The one guy was on video in the marketplace getting blown up, and the guy standing next to him was like, "Sucks to be you," and kind of wanders off.
What if one of them had their kid on their lap? That is terrorism. That's not
collateral
war, that's
damage. Yeah.
But that's terrorism, Mike. Blowing some shit up that's on somebody's belt. That is definitely going to hurt civilians. So I'm just getting sick of Israel being painted as the good guy all the time. They do some fucked up shit too.
No, we said this before, both of us on here, right? On multiple times we've spoken about Israel that they have their own part to play, and they have their own stuff to their own shit to eat. Honestly,
Listen,
they've done plenty of shit. USS Liberty in the 70s, right? They attacked one of our own Navy ships, so-called ally, and you know what I mean. So
and they've spied on us, and done it, but
the spying campaign multiple times that we've caught them. There's a lot of negativity there, so I don't think anybody gets a free pass.
Again, gun to my head, are they the good guy in overall? Yeah, they are, but This whole idea that because you're our ally, you get to do whatever you want
Carte
with
blanche
impunity.
to do whatever the hell you want. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just don't go for that anymore, and it turns much of the world against us. You know, we tend to think that the whole world is Western Europe, but there's a lot of other countries out there that don't approve of these things that we
Well,
do.
look at Africa. Africa recently, right? Africa evicted the French. They're evicting us. These countries are all taking back charge of their governments and they're throwing everybody out.
Sure.
And they've become more closely aligned to, like, say, Putin or China, because Putin and China are saying, okay, we'll work with you, but we don't want to take over. And so they're providing money for infrastructure or things like that, but they're not taking anything from them necessarily. They're kind of sharing. So,
And listen, we've driven
so
a
BRICS
country
is
like
getting so
Iran into Putin and Iran together. These are two countries
that hate each other.
Yeah, they've been trusting each other for a long time, and I will tell you right now, if Iran is close to getting a nuclear bomb, I don't know this for a fact, obviously, but I'd be willing to bet that they're getting a lot of that technology and that information from Russia.
Russia or China, either one would sell it to them.
Yep. And that's because of our foreign policy that we're driving these countries into each other's arms.
And that's why the BRICS alliance is getting so strong, because we're driving people to it with our stupidity.
Anyway, I guess we could go on forever there, but
as you could tell, we like foreign policy.
Unfortunately, neither one of the candidates gave even 1/10 of the substance.
Yeah, don't watch that
we
debate.
just
Watch
did.
this one when we talk about it. All right? Share it
But
with your
yeah,
friends.
I'm just getting a little tired of this Israel can do no wrong crap.
That's nonsense. There's no such thing as that.
It is. All right, so let's
Everybody
get
should be held
to
accountable.
the next question. So I'm not going to, I'll just paraphrase because it's very long. So the moderator, I think it was Nora O'Donnell, asked this one, was about Hurricane Helene.
Right.
So she gave a little soliloquy, and it had nothing to do with Hurricane Helene and the damage and everything. She decided that this hurricane was made worse because of climate change, and then used it as a question for each of the candidates' policies on climate change. Which, again, listen, if the climate is changing, the climate is changing. If the data says so, then the data says so. But this is such nonsense that anybody can say with any sort of certainty that a storm that happened 3 days ago would have been less severe 80 years ago because of climate change. Just look at the history. What Mike and I, we were just discussing a couple of minutes ago, the hurricane that took out Galveston back in the early 1900s. Nobody was talking about climate change then. Climate change should have had nothing to do with that question, Mike. No. That question should have been about the people who are suffering
and their federal response.
And the federal response.
Or lack thereof.
Well, so go ahead.
So, first off, with climate change, there was an article, and I got to look for it so I can post it up to this, but there was an article that came out not that long ago, maybe in the last 6 months, a year, max, about how 80 or 85% of that data, that the supposed data they have for climate change or whatever, was all fabricated. It was like a big scandal that got no attention. But I remember that coming out, but that's besides the point. Like, climate change is the biggest scam inflicted on the world in a long time. And regardless of what you think about climate change, it has nothing to do with the actual human suffering and death that's happening right now in the South, you know? You have a storm that dumped something like 7 trillion gallons of water on areas that never see hurricanes. That is unbelievably catastrophic.
Right, and somebody
Why are we
like
talking about the response?
Well, somebody like Nora O'Donnell is saying that that's because of climate change, which even if it is, there's no way to know that now.
It doesn't matter. Let's have that conversation after we rescue these people and get these things put back to right
That
again.
would be a good idea, but they never do. Mike, it's every time we have a storm. If you have a blizzard in the winter, like
Sandy.
you're supposed to.
Yeah, remember Sandy?
Like these things never happened before. Look, again, I don't know enough. I'm not a scientist. I don't have data in front of me. If the data says that the climate's changing, the climate's changing. I don't understand why everybody makes this like it's life and death and scaring the hell out of people.
It's just fear porn. Listen, fear is an easy way to control a populace, right?
Yeah, that's
what it is. And what have they been doing since the 60s? In the 60s, we heard about the next coming ice age, or the oil was going to run out in the 70s, or all this crap. If you go back and look at it, it's been there for a long time. It's the newest version of fear porn, just to siphon money into these organizations and groups that do nothing more than just build more fear porn.
When we were little, they said it was overpopulation in the world. Was
overpopulation,
going, we're not going to have enough food and the soil.
Do you remember the congressperson who was talking about an island flipping over because there was too many people on it?
No.
It's going to flip over. This happened, I think, like 20... It was not that long ago, within the last 10 years or so, but it was an actual person in Congress talking about this. It was hysterical.
That I don't remember that one, to be honest.
No.
But I will tell you this. I mean, to me, the way I see things, the earth is a lot cleaner now than it was when I was a kid.
Oh, without a doubt.
I mean, we don't have rivers going on fire like the kind
You don't have rivers going on fire. You don't hear about the smog over LA anymore. Remember that? That used to be
and
when
the
we were kids.
ozone layer. Remember, there's going to be a whole new
the ozone
that's
layer,
gonna kill
the
us.
smog over LA. Listen, the world's far cleaner than it used to be, and we are one of the cleanest. We actually, I think, are the cleanest country on the planet.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, if you look at the big polluters in the world right now, it's China. Africa comes in probably a close second,
Right.
but China's the big one. So why are we looking for more and more
So
restrictions?
if Americans all drive electric cars, that's going to somehow negate all the coal that's being burned in China. It just doesn't make any
Remotely.
sense. It's just nonsense.
How do you
and you
charge
know what,
your
Mike?
electric car?
Every poll
Yeah.
shows that this is very low on America's list of priorities.
Because people recognize bullshit when they see it, you know.
Even if it's not bullshit, in substance, right? Like even like I said, even if the climate is technically changing, it's just not something that concerns too many people.
Because I mean, how many times have you been told the world's ending? AOC, it's ending in 5 years. Greta Thunberg, it's ending in 10 years.
Yeah.
We've passed every so-called doomsday, that's come around.
And it's the boy who
nothing.
cried wolf. I mean, we were hearing it when we were
Al
kids.
Gore, right? Oh, there's going to be no more ice caps. You're going to be a polar bear swimming past your house. Like, yeah, thanks, asshole.
Al Gore lost an election. He decided he needed a way to be relevant, so he puts out that movie.
You need to make some money.
That was it. All right. Anyway, next topic that they spoke about in the debate, Margaret Brennan asked about immigration. So she said, we're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues with American voters. A very fair and honest way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
It is one of the top issues. It is a crisis, like she said.
Yep.
She turned to Vance and said, Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who are born in U.S. soil? I didn't watch, but I can guarantee you people must have said, oh, it's a biased question, it's a biased question. It's a fair question. Trump has said that he's going to do the largest mass deportation in history. Margaret Brennan was just asking, like they asked Trump in the presidential debate, what would this look like? I think it's a fair question. J.D. Vance, yeah, he did kind of dance around it, but he did say, let me just get to it here, he says, that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what we will actually do. So we've got 25 million illegal aliens here in this country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing is we start with criminal migrants. So I think it was a good answer. He's acknowledging you're not deporting 20 million people. Obviously we're not. But let's at least start with the bad
criminals.
guys.
Yeah, get rid of the criminal element, and then you can deal with the rest. And you can sort that issue out as you get to it.
Yeah.
But, absolutely. Start with the criminal element, get the criminals out of the country, secure the border so we stop putting terrorists and criminals in the country, and then you can start answering those tougher questions about, the anchor babies and the birthright citizenship and all that kind of stuff that goes on. That's a very complex kind of process that you have to talk about there. It's something that, there's feelings on either side of that, Do you award somebody citizenship just because they happen to pop a baby out while they're here? Like, is that something that needs to be?
No, I don't think you do, obviously. But, fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, the 14th Amendment does grant citizenship if you're born in U.S. soil. Not in all cases, right? I mean, people think that that's just a blanket thing. If a diplomat is here and has a baby, that baby is not automatically granted U.S. citizenship.
Right.
But, look, it is a big deal.
I think that's something to be sorted out, but I think he's right, though. You start with the criminal element, the criminal organizations, the criminal illegals that are here, the terrorists, whatever, and you get them the hell out, and then you can sort the rest out, because it gives you time to kind of get the border under control and secured, get the criminals out. It gives you time to then have that conversation and make some kind of reasonable plan to kind of address the rest of what's going on.
And although you're not going to get rid of 20 million, we can send back a significant portion because,
I think you can probably get the
in my
majority.
opinion, you have to have some sort of a message out there that you can't just do this and again,
then be rewarded for it. Yeah.
I'm totally for the compassion. We've had this discussion before.
Of course, you want to help people, absolutely.
Yes, and
but
you don't want to
can't
tear
reward
up
bad
families.
behavior.
No, you can't. But here's what I would say though: I don't blame the illegal immigrants.
I don't either.
Because even though, like you said, they're breaking the law and they're doing it the wrong way, they've been given a wink and a nod, and this didn't just start.
They're handing them $3,500 a month. Tell them, come in, hang out, we'll give you free money, free apartment, free rent, free whatever.
But let's be fair. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, it was Republicans waving them in
because
and
they want
saying,
cheap
we'll
labor.
get you a job. You can
because
get
they wanted cheap labor. Yeah,
right.
Because they wanted cheap labor.
So, yeah, there is a question of fairness, Mike. It is something that you do have to think about. It's somebody that you said, hey, come on, you can come, don't worry about the law.
Because they wanted cheap labor.
Right. It would be like, when you were a cop, if you told somebody, yeah, go ahead, you got to get home, speed, go ahead, go through the stop signs, and then you pull them over and ticket them because they blew a stop sign. You don't want to tell them they can go. It's our government telling these people,
We call that
come on in,
entrapment.
come on in.
Yeah.
So we're telling them, come on in, and so there is a question of fairness, but this is
I
just
agree.
ridiculous. No country can survive like this. You just can't.
No, you're Look, how many local communities have been overwhelmed with the amount of migrants they dumped on them? I mean, Springfield, Ohio.
Yes.
Take out the whole pet thing. Just look at it realistically without the pet thing that went on. They're eating the cats. But just look at it like this. How much infrastructure do they really have to support that many people being dumped on them in one time? It's a very small community, right? So you have your medical infrastructure, your police, your fire, whatever, your EMS, your hospitals, even your local grocery stores and food. That's a huge amount of people to put in one area at one time and then expect it all to be able to sustain that. That's a massive,
And
problem.
Vance, unlike Trump, brought that up.
Well, that's the
So
smart
he
thing
didn't let
about it.
himself get trapped into the eating the dogs thing, which they tried to trap him into because they brought up Springfield
Yeah, I know.
or whatever it was. But he didn't. All of a sudden, Tim Waltz found faith and quoted Matthew 25:40
Yeah.
about how you treat the least among us, which kind of got me a little angry because that's what I quoted with you in our private conversation when I was standing up for what the Pope said. But so Tim Waltz is pretending to agree with me.
Oh, Tim Waltz is just using whatever he can to make himself appear a certain way, but
Yeah.
me and you actually believe that Matthew quote,
And
we
nobody
believe it in our
disagrees with
hearts.
that. If anybody out there disagrees with that, I don't want anything to do with them. You have to be kind and feed the hungry and take care of people,
Of course,
whether or not they're
of course,
illegally
be generous,
or
be
not.
kind, be giving. But here's the thing: how much more strife are they causing by keeping that border open?
Yeah.
How much has human trafficking increased?
Yes.
How many people trying to make it here up those highways through the South and Central America being victimized and whatever else?
Yes.
How much more human misery have they caused by doing that?
100%. You're 100% right. But then the question is, do we add on to that or how do we handle it? I don't know. I don't know what it would look like to deport 20 million people either, but
I think we're about to find out.
Waltz tried to make it again like there's going to be Nazis going door to door and, taking people, ripping them apart from their family. And to the moderator's credit, one of them, I don't remember if it was Margaret Brennan or O'Donnell, one of them said to him, well, Governor, the polls do show that over 50% of Americans agree
Yeah, because they
that
see
we
the
should have
damage it's
mass
doing to the country.
deportation. Yeah.
Sure.
So again, I don't like the fact checking and the doubling down of things by moderators, but
Yeah,
at least
I
they
agree.
did it to both of them. But
That's listen. They were nowhere near. This was nowhere near as bad. Like
No.
the fact check thing was nowhere near as bad as the presidential debate.
but these
They had
moderators,
their
they just got to
moments.
get over themselves.
Yeah, it's not
It's
about
not
you.
about you, yeah.
Just let them friggin' beat each other up and get out of the way.
I mean, if you want to debate and show a smart Joe, run for office.
There you go. You can do that. I did that. It
That's
was
all.
awful. No, it was
So
great. It was great.
Margaret
It was
Brennan, who again, I'll say it publicly, I don't give a shit. You can kiss my ass if you don't like it. I like Margaret Brennan. I watch Face the Nation every Sunday when we get home from mass.
great. Guys, you gotta share this out and tag her on social media so she gets this, so that we can
Whatever.
have Rick debate her.
I like her. I like the show anyway, but run for office, Margaret. If you really want to make these points, run for office. You're supposed to ask questions, get their responses. You want to do a follow-up if it's important, fine.
And just
But
keep it moving along.
Stop with the soliloquies and stop with the showing how smart you are and everything. Just ask a fucking question. And it's not just her, Mike. It's every freaking one of these debates.
Well, that's what it is. It's like these opinion hosts, right? They're not like actual reporters or journalists. They're not actually asking these probing questions to get to the truth. They're staging things so that they can get their own personal perspective out there on things.
I don't even
And
want
that's
them
an
to
opinion
get...
host. That's not a journalist.
I don't even care if they get to the truth. I want to get to what do the candidates think about the question.
Well, that's what I mean by truth, like
Yeah.
whatever their perspective is,
Right.
right? What they believe, how they feel, what they think, or what their policy is going to be. That's what I want to know. I want to know what your policy is going to be. What are you going to do, and why are you going to do that, and how are you going to do that?
All right, Mike, we'll do one more because unfortunately they didn't ask a question about Ukraine. And I go back to our last video.
And we spoke
you
about
could see
that,
my
yeah.
tinfoil hat reasoning for that. But they did ask about the economy, and Norah O'Donnell said the economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning
Easily.
the deficit? That's again a little wordy, but a good question.
Yeah.
Your running mate put a policy out there. How are you going to pay for this without ballooning the deficit? And to be fair, they asked the same thing of J.D. Vance because Trump's proposals are going to blow up the deficit too.
You know,
Let's
he
be real.
spent a lot when he was president the first time. He wasn't fiscally conservative.
Trump is not a Paul Ryan conservative.
No, he's not fiscally conservative.
By
No.
any stretch, you know.
I think he'll save money by doing what he's planning on doing this next time around. But I think, with the whole government accountability thing with Elon Musk and all that, that'll definitely save some money. But
yeah,
he was not fiscally conservative his first term at all.
No, he's not, and he's not a true blue-blooded conservative.
No,
in the sense of Paul Ryan, that type, or
No.
And that's fine with me because you know I don't have a problem with spending if it's spent wisely.
And that's the point.
And if taxes are fair and taxes are used the right way, I do like what you said. I do agree. I like Trump's whole, and there have been other candidates that have promised this and never delivered, that there's going to be accountability. But there should be. I brought this up in another video one time, and I just think it's important. Go back and read a book called The Watchdog about Harry Truman and the Truman Committee in World War II, where in the middle of a world war, a fight for our survival. That was truly an existential threat, right?
Yeah.
Fight for our survival. Yeah. Harry Truman led a Senate committee that was a watchdog over the government spending and found a lot of corruption and a lot of waste.
Yeah.
And Roosevelt was a Democratic president. Truman was a Democratic senator. That was back in a time where that was allowable and okay. And true responsibility. Mike, our Senate will not even have a committee to oversee the billions upon billions of dollars we send Ukraine.
Well, because they're getting too much money in the back end from it. Why would he do that?
Well, and
they don't want to cut off the graft.
And think of all the graft going on in Ukraine, which is already one of the most corrupt countries in the world.
Yeah.
But it's just
laundry. It's a laundry service.
It's about accountability, and that's what you said.
I agree.
So if it's really worth it to send that money to Ukraine, and that's what we decide as a nation, fine. I disagree, but if that's what we decide as a nation, that's what we decide as a nation. But to not even allow a senatorial committee whose job it is to be a watchdog over the executive branch when the executive branch spends the money that the legislature gives them. That's the way our system works.
Right, checks and balances,
The legislature gives the money, and then they have the right to oversee and make sure that the executive branch is doing with it what they intended. They won't even do that. There is no accountability.
And that's why the congressional Senate approval rating has been sitting somewhere in the teens for a very long time now, because exactly that, because they're corrupt. They don't listen to their constituency whatsoever. Mm-hmm. They don't vote against anything or for anything that their constituency wants. There's no accountability.
No.
Which is why most people are like, what the hell's going on in D.C.? Well, it's become...
But in the not-too-distant past, Mike, World War II was just 2 generations ago, 3 generations ago, we had a Democratic senator in a Democratic-controlled Senate have a democratically controlled committee watching over a Democratic president spending money in the middle of a fucking world war.
And still calling out all the corruption and everything else.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's what should be. Yeah. That integrity.
And that's why
Bring back
then,
that integrity.
People trusted the U.S. government. I'm not saying there wasn't corruption. There was. I'm not saying that there weren't bad people in government. There were. But people trusted our government back then.
Because they were still trying to do the right things. There were still people standing up and saying, wait a minute, that's not right. We're not stealing the taxpayers' dollars here.
And we had a press that held them accountable. And we had a checks and balance system that actually did their jobs and held each other accountable. And Americans trusted their government back then.
We need a resurrection of integrity.
Nobody trusts the government now, left or right.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's true.
Terrible thing. Anyway, so those were the big issues. You guys, what did you think about the way they answered those questions? One about, obviously, the economy and whether these economic plans by both candidates will balloon the deficit. Which they will.
They will.
They will. They will. The question about Israel, I'm sure my thoughts on that are not too popular amongst our 24 conservative watchers out there.
It goes back to we're talking about integrity. There should be some integrity. There should be accountability, regardless of what country's doing what. There should be some kind of accountability and some transparency to it.
Well, you know what? Israel can do what they want. Ukraine can do what they want. But if they're doing it with my tax dollars and the weapons that my tax dollars are buying, I have a right to my fucking opinion. If you don't like it, kiss my ass.
Exactly.
I don't care. I don't like the way Israel's handling this. They're moving us closer into a world war. They can do what they want, but we're the ones funding it. Ukraine can do what I don't care if Ukraine wants to bomb Moscow. Have at it, Zelensky. But these are our weapons, our money, our tax dollars, which means we are co-belligerents, and I have every right to have an opinion on that. Yep. And like I said, any conservative out there who loves Israel and thinks that we owe them something for some reason, kiss my ass if you don't like the way I think.
Let us know what you think. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your comments. Call Rick an asshole. Whatever you want. No.
Listen, if we had more than 24 viewers, I wouldn't say that.
We have what? We have 43 or something like that. We've had a lot of views, actually. A lot of the videos doing good. Listen, you guys have been great. You've been watching. You've been keeping up with us. You're helping us kind of grow the channel, so we appreciate every bit of it.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, I wanted to just bring up a comment that we had somebody comment. I totally forgot about it. Sorry about that. Lauren, you could edit this time out if it takes me too long to find this. Or you could leave it in.
Leave it in.
You know what, Mike? Sing a little bit.
That's the last thing people want to say.
You don't want dead air, so sing a little bit. Come on.
We know dead air. Let us know what you think, though. Seriously, like we want to hear your side of things. We want to hear your thoughts, your feelings on the debate, on the questions, on the moderators, all of it. Just let us know what you're seeing, what you're thinking, and everything else, especially when it comes.
And tell me why I'm wrong about my views on it, on what Israel's doing. I have no problem with Israel, but tell me why my views are wrong. Anyway, here it is. So DLC 414-1. Whoever that is, it made a very nice comment. Just wanted to shout you out, DCL. He or she said, great show. I like the format with numerous topics. So much going on in the world today. It's important to cover as much as possible. I thank you for that comment. That's exactly what we're trying to do. That's why we did come up with the name The Dirt Road, because we really don't know.
Around everywhere.
I mean, we have a plan. We have an idea of what we're going to talk about. But usually that plan. Remember when Mike Tyson said every boxer has a plan until they get punched in the mouth?
Face, yeah.
Yeah. So we have a plan until one of us makes a comment that drives us off onto a different direction. So that's why we call it the Dirt Road, because we don't know where we're going to go, and it's definitely raw and unpaved. And anyway, we're rambling. We're 41 minutes in. So say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Subscribe, comment,
share. Get some more people in here. Let's keep this conversation growing.
We got to get a button. Instead of a thumbs up and thumbs down, I just said if they don't like my ideas on Israel, kiss my ass. There should be like a big picture of a butt. Comment down below. Just be nice.
All right, guys.
Have a good night.
We look forward to your comments and everything. Thank you again for all the watches and the shares and everything else. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Good night, guys.